Okay, if you're finding this video, you're probably having the same type of problem I'm having with missing your kids. What I'm going through is called parent alienation. And it is the one parent alienating the children from another. That can be by kidnapping them, that can be by brainwashing them, it can be by a lot of things, usually by a narcissistic parent, because they believe that what they want is most important, and that they don't care who it hurts to get what they want, and most likely what they want is to hurt you, which means alienating you and your family. So I'm going to do this in the way of a Bible study and in a way of talking about parent alienation while going through the book of Job. Because I've said to many people, I feel like I'm living in the book of Job. So I lost my kids, and so did Bob. Lost family. I mean, Job, not Bob. I lost my health through stress, causing multiple problems, starting with fibromyalgia. And now they think I have Sjogren's and possibly myasthenia gravis. And they don't know what causes those things, but they do know that stress has a big effect on them, especially with flare-ups. So I lost my kids, my family, my health, and my financial security. So, and things are okay right now. It's just that we're living paycheck to paycheck, and we shouldn't be. So, with all that in mind, I'm going to go through and tell you my story. I'm not using my name. I'm going to call myself Lynn. Excuse me while I get a drink. I have dry mouth, which is from the Sjogren's. So I'm also not going to use any of my family's names, both for their privacy and for fear of retaliation from my ex-husband. And you'll learn as I tell you the story why. So it all started after my ex-husband and I had been married for about 3 or 4 years. He was working on my dad's computer, helping him out, and he said that he found pornographic material, which I didn't believe at the time, and he said, well, I'll show you how to find it. And so he showed me, he talked to me on the phone and told me where to go to find it. My dad is not computer savvy, so that should have been my first key, because my dad can't even work Facebook, let alone hide a file. At the time, I mean, this was 25 years ago. So mail groups were a big thing. And my dad looks at porn. I mean, a lot of men are into porn. And he assumed that it went on his computer from one of the downloads from that site. So my ex-husband left me for the first time after that. He explained that he had been molested as a child and that he didn't know how to deal with it. A couple months later, we got back together again. And everything was fine. Nothing was said about it. My kids spent the night, and he never had any problem with it. When I had a 2-year-old and a newborn, he left for work one day, and he sent me an email saying that he was going to another state where he grew up to deal with things from his childhood. She kind of made reference to it, but from his being molested or something. So he left and was gone for a month. He left me $100 in the bank. And then, so my parents and his parents were supporting the kids and I, because I was a stay-at-home mom. So, oh, sorry, I gotta get another drink. My stress levels and anxiety go up, and then I tend to get drier. So, excuse me if I have to take drinks throughout this. Okay, so, shoot, sorry about that. I have a tripod and didn't, there we go. I was trying to move this because I had written down here and not realized that, there we go. I didn't realize that it wasn't in frame. So, there we go. Okay, sorry about that. So he left me the second time. I threatened to file for legal separation, and he came back. And I told him at that time that if he left me again, that I wasn't going to take him back because I wasn't going to put my kids through this. My kids were my all. My kids, they were everything to me. I did everything for them. My mom cried once because after we got divorced and I moved in with them, my mom went to do our laundry, and I had holy clothes and my kids had brand new clothes. And that's how it was. I gave them everything. I did everything. Probably I did too much now looking back on it. I probably doted on them too much and didn't make them do enough chores and stuff like that. But I loved them with every inch of my being. As I'm sure you do your kids. I mean, I'm sure I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. So, anyway, he came back. Things were better. Then, when my oldest was 8 years old, he went to work one day and called me and said he wasn't coming home, that he didn't love me anymore. So we were living in his mom's house at the time. Well, we were renting a house from his mother at the time. So his mom decided that she wanted to come down and support her son. We had to move into an apartment, which because my attorney made him pay for, which he was not at all happy about. And his mom actually took all of our stuff and threw it on the front lawn. Yeah, it was quite a family. So, anyway, hold on while I get another drink. So at that time we started going through divorce proceedings. And it went very well for him because he had to pay child support. Because we were married for over 10 years, he would have had to pay spousal support. But we had a lot of bills. So our attorneys worked out a deal where if he paid all the bills every month, that he wouldn't have to pay spousal support. Well, he's not good at math, and he misunderstood and thought he just had to make the minimum payment on whatever he wanted to. He wasn't paying all the bills. So I contacted my attorney, And they made him not only pay for the bills, but pay spousal support on top of it, which really ticked him off. I'm a Christian, so I try not to cuss, but I'm trying really hard when I discuss this not to. So, anyway. With him trying to hurt me through the divorce, he made it known that what he had found on my dad's computer and said, well, the kids can't be alone with your dad. Which was really hard because my dad, he was a workaholic, so he was hardly ever home, but he gave the kids everything they wanted. Okay, which made my ex resent him even more. Sorry, I have to go through and dub something out because I accidentally said my ex's name. So, anyway, so I was very, very careful because I was worried that my ex would take the kids away from me if I didn't follow through with it. And I'm a rule follower anyway. I don't like to get in trouble for things, so. And I knew that it was a legal thing also, so I didn't want to get in trouble for that either. So, my dad was never alone with my kids. Ever. Well, he was alone with my sons because I had asked. Okay, I really gotta be careful because I just said his name again. Okay. So my dad was not allowed around the kids, and for fear of him taking the kids away from me, I went along with that, and he wasn't, other than my boys, which my ex had said that was okay because it was, I don't know. So anyway, so he was never alone with my girls, ever. So everything, well, he took the kids when they were younger. He took them every other Saturday for a couple hours and took them to the park, and that was it. And then when he got married, he finally took them overnights for the weekends. And he said it was to help me because he knew it would be hard on me. Yeah, he just didn't want to watch the kids. He wasn't, when we were married, he would go on his computer when he got home or he'd go to sleep. That was it. He didn't really do much with the kids. I mean, he did do some, mostly to look like a good dad. He's all into that, as a narcissist, he's all into that image. So he seems like a good guy on the surface. So, lay down. Sorry, my dog is bugging me. Okay. So years went on, everything seemed good, we didn't fight in front of the kids. I thought, oh, I've got the best ex-husband ever, because I had been hearing stories from my friends who got divorced and how horrible their ex was. Well, yeah, it was all coming to a crash. So when each of my children turned 16, like when my oldest turned 16, she was fighting a lot with my mom. They were arguing a lot. And he said, oh, let her come stay with me for a couple months and I'll, give them some space. And then she can come back and things will be better. Well, then I didn't really see her very much. I saw her like every other week or whatever. Because she's 16. She's got a busy life or whatever. So, anyway, so things went on with that. And then my oldest son turned 16, and he had quite a temper and had shoved his sister up against a wall and stuff, and at which point I knocked him on his butt. Because he had his sister up against a wall. So, and I didn't it didn't hurt him at all. It just shocked the heck out of him. But anyway, so as I say that, I'm like, oh my gosh, how can I'm thinking of the ways that he can spin this to make me look bad, but anyway. So, my ex said, oh, let him come stay with me for a couple months and I'll straighten him out. And at the time, he wanted to go in the morning and go over to his girlfriend's house at 7 o'clock in the morning and wake her up. He was homeschooled. I homeschooled all my kids up until they were in high school. And loved every minute of it. But I, being a Christian woman, was not about to let my 16-year-old son go over and wake his girlfriend up every morning. So he went to go stay with his dad. And his dad let him go wake her up. So, anyway, so, hold on one second. Get another drink. So I confronted my ex and said, well, why are you trying to take the kids away from me? He I forget what the word is for it, but he just said, oh no, it's all your fault, and it's because of your parents, and da 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 da, and I don't remember the terminology for that, but just making me seem like, oh, I'm the crazy one for even suspecting it. So that went on. Then my youngest daughter turned 16, and actually she wasn't even 16 yet. She was almost 16. And I got a call one night from CPS saying that my oldest girl had informed them that my dad had inappropriately touched her. And although I didn't know how that was possible, she's my daughter, so I'm going to support her and I'm going to believe her. So I did. And I didn't talk to my dad for 2 weeks. When they called me, I was throwing up in the backyard. I'm sorry to be, blunt, but I was that sick to my stomach. I didn't eat I don't think I even ate for a week. So then it went, I was living with my parents at the time, so I had to move out of my parents' house. And I did that. I got an apartment, and like a couple days before we were supposed to move in, my ex calls me and said, well, it's great that you got an apartment, but you're not getting the kids back. And my youngest daughter had been picking out stuff for her room, and it was a 2-bedroom, so I was planning on sleeping on the couch so that my kids could have their own rooms. And so then my anxiety is getting up there, so I'm having a hard time thinking. So all of a sudden it went from everything being against my dad to it being against me. And they said that, oh, you knew about it and you let it happen, and you guys had a family meeting with grandma and grandpa and said that's just what grandparents do. Well, no, I didn't know about it. No, I would not have let it happen. Okay, I just did it again. Okay, take 3. So if I knew it was happening, I would have lived out of my car and given my ex the kids before I would have put any of my children through it. I was a mama bear. I was very protective of my kids. I was raising them 24/7. Pretty much by myself. So anyway, everything all started just turning on me. And I'm like, okay, well, I know this didn't happen, so maybe And I know that my dad was never around the girls alone, so maybe it didn't happen. And maybe this is just my ex punishing me and my family. So, so then I started kind of figuring out what was going on. Just about the time I started figuring that out, and because, well, my youngest daughter came for a visit because they were still living with their dad at the time. We had just got the apartment. And she says, oh, well, my sister said if I ask her, I can ask her any questions I want and she'll tell me everything I want to know. Well, we weren't supposed to talk about it at all because they didn't want anybody to be, pushed into thinking something happened or, whatever. So a week later, when I saw her again, she said, oh, well, that happened to me too. And the way they had said it happened in the middle of the night. Well, they were all four living in one room together in bunk beds. And my oldest was in a top bunk bed. So we're like, okay, there's no way this could happen. My mom and I are both light sleepers. I left my bedroom door open, so if my kids needed me in the middle of the night, I could hear them. My mom, every time my dad got up, she could feel it would wake her up. The movement would wake her up. So we knew that was highly unlikely. Then one of them said, oh, it was in the morning with cartoons. And I'm like, my dad got up 7 days a week at 5 o'clock in the morning. He owned his own business. And he got up and he would go to work. He got up, got dressed, brushed his teeth, and went to work. Every single morning. And my kids at 5 o'clock in the morning were still asleep. So I knew that was totally impossible. And my mom got up at 5 o'clock every morning to go out and go feed the horses, so she was up. And he always left before she did that. So I was putting the pieces together and figuring out that this was all just a lie. And I didn't think my kids were lying at all. I knew that they wouldn't say this on their own. So I had a feeling that they were being brainwashed. Because I know my kids, they would never knowingly hurt anybody. They were good, sweet kids. So then, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. Anxiety. So then, before I even started putting that together and decided that I didn't believe what had happened, it came out to my girls, oh, your mom doesn't believe you. And I'm like, well, how does that happen? Because I didn't even know I didn't believe it had happened yet. So because the courts found out that I didn't believe that it happened, that I thought that they were being brainwashed, I had to have visitations with my girls because it was detrimental to their mental health that I not believe them. So I had to have people from church come over and oversee my time with my own kids. So, after that, I hardly saw any of my kids other than my youngest. My youngest stayed with me for a couple of years after that. Also, because my dad had been gone through they went through CPS, and so they actually charged my dad. And they were going to fight it until my youngest daughter said, "Oh yeah, me too." And then his attorney's like, "Well, we can't fight two of them. You're either gonna if you go to trial, you're gonna get 20 years or 25 years. If you plead out, they'll give you 5 and you'll get out in 3 years and 9 months." So he had to plead out and say that he did it so that he could have somewhat of a life. So then a couple years later, my youngest, my son, started just getting really, really angry, and just he was homeschooled at the time. He was actually the only one that I homeschooled through in high school, and he was, I think it was his freshman year, maybe it was his sophomore year. Anyway, he was 15 at the time, and so I think that would have been freshman. But so he went, and I babied him way more than I should have, and let him be on his video games way more than I should have, because I felt guilty because his life was in chaos, and he didn't know what was going on because we weren't allowed to tell him. So he was going to a therapist at the time, so we had to have the therapist tell him, because it was just upsetting him so much that he didn't know what was going on. So, and his therapist, he first went to him and I explained what happened, I was like, "Yeah, they said we had a family meeting," and he goes, "Oh, and let me guess, they said it's just what grandpas do." I'm like, oh my goodness, this is a thing. So, anyway, my son was on the computer way more than he should have been, and he would go on and play online games with his friends and stuff. And one of his friends started convincing him that I was a horrible mother because I wanted him to do this is all I asked him to do. I wanted him to do his schoolwork. I wanted him to clean his room and do 2 chores. That's all I asked of him in a day. That's it. That's the only things he had to do. And his friend convinced him that I was just horrible for making him do this when he was so stressed. Excuse me. So he started getting more and more disrespectful, more and more irate. He started grabbing me when we'd get in arguments about him doing his stuff. So we got in a really big fight, and he left one night. And he walked out the door, and I said, "Well, you either go to your dad's or I'm calling the cops and reporting you as a runaway, because I'm not going to have you just out on the streets." I would rather him be in his dad's care, which shows you, how much I wanted my kids safe. That I wanted him in his dad's care versus out on the street alone. So then I hardly saw him anymore. Oh, and the night or 3 days before this all came out with CPS, my 4 children and I and my parents all went out for bowling. And it was like the best time we had had in a long time. There was no arguing. My oldest, which, she was a teenager, so she didn't want to be out with family and doing things and stuff. And she was rightfully had a lot of anxiety and depression and stuff like that. She was actually laughing and having fun. And 3 days later, I got the call from CPS. And when I confronted her about it, she said, "Oh, that was the hardest night of my life." And I'm like, you weren't making that up. There's no way. I know my daughter, if something was going on, she let you know something was going on. And if she was not happy, she would let you know. So, anyway, so my dad ended up going to jail for 3 years and 9 months. He is out now, thank God. And God was watching over him because he was in the lowest security prison that we have here. But while he was in there, my mom passed away. She got cancer. 3 days before she passed away. Oh, and by the way, I think the person who was on the computer was either my ex or my oldest daughter. Because I saw my oldest daughter manipulate my youngest daughter the same way her dad manipulated her to get her to come over. He would take, because when he got married, his new... Okay, sorry, my recording shut off. So he would do things to make my kids jealous so that they would want to come over. And my oldest... And this, it didn't even make sense to me until after my dad went to jail and I went through therapy. My oldest, when she was 6 or 7 years old, she was supposed to go over to her dad's for the weekend. And he came to pick the kids up. And she got really upset and ran downstairs to the office and went underneath the desk and hid. And she was visibly shaking and crying and say she didn't want to go. And so my ex-husband left with the other kids. She would not come out from underneath that desk until I convinced her that he had left. And I assumed it was, we had gotten in a really big fight before we had separated. And so I thought she was just scared of him from that. When she would go over there and spend the night, she didn't like to go over there at all. And a lot of the time she'd stay home. But he started, when she didn't go, they went out and did something fun. So, and then when she went over there, they wouldn't do anything. So it was just part of his manipulation. But if she did go over there, she'd always want me to pick her up. She'd always call me right before bedtime to come pick her up. What my therapist, when we were going through my therapy, came up with was that it may be possible that he actually is the one that molested my girls. Because, and I'm not saying everybody gets molested, molest somebody else, but he did get molested as a kid. She hated going over there, was terrified going over there sometimes. So, and she was almost grabbed one time. We were out with our church. And after that, she would hurt my arm with the grip she had on my arm when we go out. And so I asked her all the time, did that man that tried to grab you, did he hurt you? You know, did he do something to you? Because she seemed like, and she kept telling me no and no and no. And I always raised my kids, okay, you know, these are the names of your private parts. You don't let anybody touch them. And I would periodically ask them and make sure that, you know, they were hardly ever out of my sight. But there's times when they were, you know, when they'd go to do the sports and stuff like that. But anyway, so, sorry, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry, this is so long. This one I'm trying to tell you my story, and then after that, then everyone after that will be more about Job. I just thought it was beneficial for you guys to know my story first before we started. So you can see what God has gotten me through. So I never would have got through without him. Anyway, so all of my kids ended up going to my ex. I hardly ever saw him. My dad went to jail. Oh yeah, my mom got cancer, and it got real bad, and they gave her 2 weeks to live. So I contacted my kids, which I hadn't done, because they had all yelled and screamed and cussed and everything at me not to talk to him anymore, not to leave. I mean, he has them believing that that I beat them and I'm a drug addict. So that's what my youngest son told me. So anyway, so we went to, sorry, I lost my train of thought again. Oh, my mom. So when they gave her 2 weeks to live, even though my kids had told me they didn't want me to have any contact with them, I felt it was important for them to know. So I contacted them and let them know. Well, 3 days after my mom passed away, I had CPS at my door saying that my son was saying that I slapped him so hard his jaw still hurts, that I punched him in the stomach, that I wouldn't let him, would lock him in his room and not let him out, and it was just went on and on. It was like 2 pages full of things that he said, but I couldn't even read all of them. The CPS worker let me read it, and I was bawling halfway through, and he said, okay, you don't need to read any more of this, because I was getting too upset. But with all that he had said that I did, he had accused my dad too. He said that, that my dad had pulled down his pants out in the kitchen, and that he had raped him. And that was the only 2 sentences he said about my dad. Well, you'd think that if that had actually happened, he would have had more explanation. He didn't. It was all the rest of it was all just about me and how I was a terrible mother. So luckily, the detective who was looking into it said that he noticed that it was obvious he was making it up to try and get attention. One thing that, and yeah, this is God, I had a video the last time when my youngest and I got in that argument where he left. I had recorded it because I wanted to show him the way he was acting. And so I had that proof. And in the whole video, my son is yelling at me and cussing at me. He tries to grab my phone, so I couldn't record him. I was standing in his doorway trying to talk to him and trying to calm him down. And all this time, my son is yelling and screaming at me, and my voice is completely calm because I'm trying to calm the situation down. And so I went, and I was standing in front of his door. He literally physically pushed me up against the wall so that he could get past me. When he was trying to get my phone away from me, he grabbed my arms and squeezed as hard as he could. And all this is on video. So I showed the CPS worker this video. He watched about a minute of it and said that he couldn't watch anymore because he was being so disrespectful to me that it just hurt to watch. So, anyway, so my mom passed away. My dad is home now. But my dad's worked his whole life so he and my mom can be comfortable when they retire and could go travel, and they didn't get to do any of it. So, and he's hurting a lot because, he didn't even get to see her. I mean, he saw her like 9 months before she passed away. But we didn't have a funeral. We just had a burial and stuff. But, because she didn't want a funeral, but he didn't get to go. He didn't get to see her one last time. He didn't get any of it. So, silver lining is this has not pushed me away from God. It's just brought me closer to Him. Because I could not have gone through it without Him. He is literally my rock. I would be a puddle on the floor if I did not have Him to lean on and to hold me up. So I hope He's doing that for you. I really do. And I hope He's doing that for my kids. I pray for my kids all the time. I even pray for my ex, because I do it for me. I have forgiven him, not for him, and I never told him that, because I'm not going to give him that power over me, but I forgave him for me, because I've never hated somebody in my entire life, and yet I hated him to the core. I hated him so much, because he took my kids away from me, and they were my world. And he hurt them, which hurts me even more than losing them, the fact that he's manipulating them and emotionally abusing them. And what they've gone through, the CPS worker, when I went to go talk to him, he said, my kids are so screwed up. And the two that are the most screwed up are the two that he manipulated the most, the two that were closest to me. All of my kids were close to me, but my oldest and my youngest were the closest to me, and they are the ones that are most screwed up. I mean, my oldest son had to go through counseling at one time because he was suicidal. That was after he started going to his dad's, or after he moved in with his dad. It's just, it hurts me to the core how much he's hurt them. And I pray every night that I don't even care at this point. I mean, I care. I want them to know the truth. I want them back in my life. But the most important thing to me is that he sees what he's doing and he stops doing it. So I pray for them to see the truth, and I pray for him to see the truth in himself. I pray for God to soften his heart and him to just, sorry, cut off. So if you haven't forgiven that other person in your life that is trying to take your kids away, I wholeheartedly would tell you to pray for them. Pray for them and pray for your kids, because your kids are going through hell right now. I can't even... It hurts me too much to think about how much they're hurting. So, anyway, that's my story. I may at some time as we're going through this bring up something else. I don't think I forgot anything, but if I did, I'll bring it up as we're talking about stuff. So, next time we will start getting into the book of Job. And I'm not a Bible teacher. I don't know everything about the Bible. I just know that God has been there for me. And I know that God was there for Job. And Job went through everything that we're going through. And he came through because he had God. And that's the only way you will make it through. So I pray that you have God. And if you don't, I pray that you will look in your heart and soften your heart and listen to the Holy Ghost that's tapping you on the shoulder right now going, you know, you need to have God. It's the only way to get through it. And we don't have much more time on this earth. So that's one of the purposes of this channel, is to, you know, let you know you're not alone. Study the book of Job and show you how much God loves you. I mean, there's always silver linings. One of the silver linings in mine is that my mom and my dad, who haven't gone to church since before I can even remember, I was like a baby, have both come back to God. So my mom went back to God before she passed away. My dad went back to God and has actually watched church with me a couple times and was going through a church group in prison. He's having a hard time right now because he's still having a hard time after losing mom, and I think he's blaming God a little bit for that. And he wants to go to church with me, but because of what he went to jail for, he's not allowed to until his parole officer approves it. So I gotta see if my church can help with that anyway. So anyway, sorry it was such a long story, but now you guys know where I'm coming from, and I'm here if any of you need to talk, need somebody to listen, need a shoulder to cry on, need somebody to pray with, whatever you need, I'm here. I hope you guys have a blessed day, and I will see you next time.